And all right, it's 10 o'clock. My name is Art Haywood. I'm a state senator in Pennsylvania. And for several years, we have been trying to assist individuals who are in a workplace but have no retirement plans at work. And there are over 2 million Pennsylvanians in this position. And we have a fantastic group of panelists who are here to further explore this topic. Now, I have introduced legislation, which is currently in the state Senate, is Senate Bill 728. And what it does is provide for retirement savings managed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. All of the funds are from individuals. The Commonwealth is not putting in any of the funds. However, it does provide an automatic payroll deduction that makes the savings so much more likely. And there are many states around the United States that are doing the same thing. By further background, back in 2015, when I first joined the General Assembly, I joined with Republican State Senator John Eichelberger. We were both on the Senate Finance Committee, and we looked at this question as to how we could further protect the retirement positions of Pennsylvanians. We know that Pennsylvania is a state which is getting older and older, and that's a good thing, but we need to make sure that we have people in a position to retire with dignity. Joe Torricella then became the state treasurer and began a fantastic report on the private sector retirement security task force. That's the task force that he put together, looking specifically at the retirement savings program that we had proposed. Pew Charitable Trust also did a significant study on the Keystone Saves program and came to the conclusion that this program would not only benefit those who need to retire, but also the everyday taxpayers in Pennsylvania. They came up with a multi-billion-dollar consequence of not making sure that individuals have retirement savings. So it was through this combination of the task force that the state treasurer did, as well as the work of Pew Charitable Trust and my office and others, that we continue to develop this Keystone Saves program, which again has a few key components, the automatic deduction being the core. This has continued to be a bipartisan effort in the state Senate. First, as I mentioned, we had John Eichelberger as a Republican co-sponsor, followed then by Senator Pat Brown. We also know that the Heritage Foundation, as well as the Brookings Institute, conservative and liberal, have both come together in support of this kind of program. Basically, it's very similar to the 529 program that we have for college savings, allowing individuals to use their own money, their own savings to save for college, where the state manages the funds so they can grow and get professional management, not just every family trying to figure it out for themselves. Here again, with our retirement program, it's very similar to our college program. The retirement funds are from individuals. They are invested professionally, not just every employee trying to figure out where to make the investments. So today we're going to further explore this approach. I'm glad to share that the Pennsylvania State House has already approved the legislation that we started here in the Senate. And so now we're in a very fortunate position that we only have one more chamber of the Pennsylvania General Assembly in order to get it passed. And I'm in that chamber and hopefully can gain the support of my colleagues so we can get this across the finish line. Now, before we kick off the further conversation, I would like to let folks know that I do have a number of questions for the panelists, but we're asking the panelists to speak for 5 minutes or so regarding their view of this Keystone Saves program. And then we will have about 10 minutes at the end where individuals can submit questions in writing through the chat that we may be able to ask as well. Now, our participants for today include Walter Rowan. He's the CEO of Susquehanna Glass Company, a business owner. We have John Scott, representing Pew Research. As I said, they've done quite a bit of research on this topic. We have Jessica Ekman. Jessica's with the AARP. AARP, as we all know, is the leading organization in the United States advocating for the interests of older adults, and they have been a significant supporter of this the entire time. I know that Walt Rowan is on a tight schedule, as well as possibly traveling. Walt, are you with us?
I am, Senator.
Wow. Thanks so much for being available. I know a lot's going on, and being a business owner is very demanding in the first place. But be interested in your perspectives on this automatic retirement program and what it might do for small businesses like yours.
Mhm. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today, and I appreciate your efforts on what I think is one of the most important programs, not just for small businesses, but for the working folks in Pennsylvania and across the country. I am a third generation owner of Susquehanna Glass Company. We started in 1910 with my grandfather and his brother. We are a manufacturing operation decorating glassware in Columbia, Pennsylvania. So we have a long history. We have generations of both ownership and folks in Columbia working for the company. I can guarantee you, if you go to Columbia and walk on the street and meet somebody, within 5 minutes, they will know somebody from their family that worked for my company's business. So it's we've been in the community for a long, long time. We're approximately 50 employees right now. We've had as many as 120 at one point several years ago. We've gotten smaller since the pandemic. But we are, as I said, a manufacturing operation. We're decorating glassware. So we're bringing people in, entry-level employees, up through some skilled machine operators. So our income level is entry level up to what I would call mid to high middle class. Columbia has been typically a blue-collar manufacturing town. Several years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, we actually instituted a 401k program for the business, and found within 3 years it was much too expensive for not much benefit. The problem that we had was that the typical blue-collar employee is not thinking as much future as they're thinking what their expenses are right now. Their kids are growing up. They've got, they don't think they have excess income or money to put aside. They need to. We've employed people for 30 and 40 years. So we've seen them from when they started having kids to retiring. And if they didn't put any money aside, they don't have anything to live on. So there's no question that it's an important program to offer. And I'm proof, my business is proof that as a small employer, it's very, very difficult for us to offer economically a 401k program as is typically set up. So I can't think of something more appropriate to be working on. And I can give you examples of people that I tried to hire, but weren't able to because they were working for a company that they had a 401k plan that they invested in that company, and they didn't want to come to mine because we didn't have one. So I just, my experience tells me that it's something that would be an enormous benefit to both the business owners in terms of trying to employ people and down to what the impact is going to be to our employees.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Now, some of the concerns that have been raised around this program have been that the private marketplace can already provide retirement plans for these individuals. Uh, Now, we still know there's 2 million, a little bit over 2 million individuals who are in a workplace without a retirement plan.
Mhm.
So, is there a private marketplace, folks coming to your business and sharing what they can offer their employees that then the employees would accept?
No, not that I'm
So,
aware of. I
this is,
mean,
go ahead.
the the economy of the United States offers all of us many, many ways to save money and to earn, you know, gain wealth over time. It is proven that the vast majority of us don't take those opportunities as seriously as we should. We don't do it when we're young because we're not thinking about what it'll be like when we're older. And when we get older, then it's almost too late and we go, oh, it's too late. That's just human nature. Um, Social Security at the national level has proven, absolutely proven, that if you in Social Security's case, you're forcing people because they're being taxed to put it aside. When you force people to do something and then it just becomes routine, they're glad it's been done after the fact. This is a program, what we're talking about, that it doesn't force, but it makes the opportunity so much easier. And what I can tell you is that as a business owner, I'm not saying that my influence on my employees is greater than anybody else's, but it's a tool that I would be able to use to encourage my employees to do something that's good for themselves. So, um, is there a way to do it in the private market? Of course there is, but we know because we have history that shows it's just not done.
Yeah, yeah,
As far as I'm
that,
concerned, there's no downside to this. There is no downside.
thanks for that. So, this is a automatic payroll deduction
Mhm.
program where the initial setup of the automatic deduction is one time, and then
Mhm.
thereafter is payroll, just like you would set up an employee for workers' compensation one
Mhm.
time or any of the initial benefits one time. And then we've looked at some other states, and employers have said it could take them 20 minutes to a half an hour. Some even said shorter than that to get it set up. How burdensome is such a setup at the initial period? It's a one-time setup. How burdensome is that on an employer?
Let me tell you something that's one of the basic principles of small business owners that's different than corporations is that I guarantee you 80 to 90% of small business owners know, live with, and care about their employees. They're part of our family. I have people that have worked for me for 35 years. I know everything about them, their kids, their parents. And we as owners always will look for a program that is going to benefit our employees. 20 minutes out of, we're setting somebody up to come to work for us anyway. 20 minutes to set this up to try to encourage somebody to actually do something that 30 years from now, they will go, thank God I worked for Susquehanna Glass and they did this for me. Thank God. So 20 minutes is a ridiculously small amount of time and a pathetic argument to not do something
Thanks so much.
like this.
Uh, you mentioned the 401k program that you tried, didn't work. Um, some people have encouraged 401k programs. The national government has encouraged these 401k programs.
Mhm.
What about the 401k program became difficult to manage and cause you to say, we can't go this way?
Well, in my case, again, I had salespeople and marketing people whose incomes were at a level that they were interested in and thinking about long-term investment. So I had a few people participate, but the vast majority of the people that worked for me were in a manufacturing lower income level, and they just were not interested in participating. So, and there was a carrying cost, just the administrative cost to have the program set up, that was way more, relatively speaking, expensive than the value that we saw going out to a few limited employees. So we just said this is not worth pursuing, because there's way, if we have excess money to go into employees' benefits, we could better share that by giving bonuses and that type of thing. So when you're looking as a business owner at options, you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. We were spending several $1,000s administrating a plan that just was not benefiting nearly enough people. So we stopped doing it. Again, this plan doesn't have that kind of a burden, and I would love to be able to be in a position to be encouraging my employees to participate.
Wow, nah, thanks so much. Please stay on as long as you can.
Thank you.
I do want to get to some additional panelists, but uh, it's my hope that we can get what was sent to the House out of the Senate, even if we have some further compromise, so that businesses like yours can protect the employees, that you say are part of your family, and we know they're going to retire. And
That's
the more
right.
money they have to retire, the more likely that they'll have a decent place to stay, a decent amount of food, and also less likely to depend on public assistance when it comes time to retire. And that obviously is another hit on all of us as taxpayers. I do want to recognize, so thank you so much, Walt. I do want to recognize Norda Eisenhower. It's good to see you again with AARP. And I know that my good friend Teresa Osborne is also on, although I understand she's not going to speak today, but thank you so much. Nora, would you share with us how you see the changing demographics of Pennsylvania and what that means for retirement savings?
Good morning. My name is Nora Dowd Eisenhower, and thank you, Senator. I'm the volunteer state president for AARP. I also want to thank you, Senator, for your leadership on this important issue. AARP is positioned to support this state-sponsored retirement plan for private sector workers who would otherwise not have any job-related retirement savings, as we just heard the story so well told by Walt Rowan. You said it, 2 million Pennsylvanians do not have access to workplace security, especially those who work for themselves or for a small business. And while Social Security, we know, is a crucial piece of the puzzle, it alone is not enough to depend on. I just want to give you a statistic. The average Social Security benefit for a 65 plus family is about $21,000 a year. That's the average. Yet older Pennsylvania families on average spend $25,000 a year on food, utilities, and healthcare. Half of all households are at risk of not being able to afford everyday expenses like medicine, as we said, utilities, and rent in retirement. I'd also like to tell you that research shows that Americans are 15 times more likely to save for their retirement when they can do so where they work with an automatic deduction. In fact, the automatic deduction results in 20% more, 20 times more savings. So Keystone Saves can provide an easy pathway for workers to start saving out of their regular paycheck and grow the additional savings they need to take control of their future. It's their own money that they can easily take with them from job to job. and rely on in later years. When individuals save for their own retirement, they are less likely to rely on public assistance programs later in life. Retirement savings plans like Keystone Saves provide a simple way for small business employees to save for their own retirement, and in turn, save significant taxpayer dollars for programs like Medicaid. In fact, Pennsylvania could save taxpayers as much as $330 million. This is why AARP urges state lawmakers to enact Keystone Saves to make it easier for Pennsylvanians to build a safety net for a more secure future. You also mentioned this rapidly growing population of older Pennsylvanians. It's happening in Pennsylvania, it's happening across the country, it's happening globally. And that is why your vision on working to enact a program like this is so important. Today, 1 in 4 Pennsylvanians is over the age of 60. I'm one of those folks too. By 2030, it will be up to 1 in 3. The average Social Security benefit, as I mentioned earlier, for a 65 plus family in Pennsylvania is $1,750 a month or $21,000 a year. These families then spend nearly $25,000 a year on food, utilities, and healthcare. We need to support Pennsylvania workers of all ages to grow their retirement savings now so they can live independently as they age.
Thank you so much. And that 1 in 3 is a big number. I'm also part of that 1 in 3, or the 1 in 4 now. I'm not ashamed of it. In fact, I'm very proud of it. But I do have saved for retirement. My wife is saved for retirement, so we have had a retirement plan. And to hear that over 2 million folks don't have retirement plans is very concerning. You also mentioned the dollar amount for a number of basic living expenses. Did you include housing as part of that expense?
I included rent. So it's not going to be the same perhaps for homeowners, but we included a basic calculation of rent.
So it's clearly, from what you shared, that Social Security is not going to be enough for everyday Pennsylvanians to retire with dignity, which makes this so much more compelling. So, yeah, I know you talked to folks in the General Assembly. What do you think would be a message that we should convey to members of the Pennsylvania State Senate who have not gone as far as the House? The House has done what it needs to do. It's got it over to us. What do you think we should help them see that they may not yet see?
Okay, here's our message. And I've worked with Teresa Osborne on this, who's the wonderful staffer at AARP who I work with. Okay, today, 2 million Pennsylvania private sector workers don't have access to retirement savings accounts at work, especially those employed by small businesses, leaving them unprepared for the future and at risk to rely on public taxpayer-funded programs is a no-go. Without retirement savings accounts, Pennsylvanians will count on Social Security even more for their own financial security. However, we all know that Social Security alone is not enough for them to depend on as their sole source of retirement income. And I'd just like to add, as Walt explained, he lost a worker because he didn't have a retirement savings plan. This helps small businesses too. It helps them keep and stabilize their workforce.
Thanks so much. And one thing that I'm so glad you mentioned is the mobility feature. Walt did share that the 401ks is more challenging sometimes to transfer them from one employer to the next. And so this retirement plan makes the mobility very easy because it is the employee's money. No matter where they're working, it's their money. It's being invested over time.
It's so efficient to trust our state treasury with this. I think that's another piece of it that gives me confidence in this kind of a program.
And our current, Joe Torricello was for it. Thanks for sharing that. And our current state treasurer, Stacey Garrity, is a big advocate for this program. And they have the experience of the
That's right.
529 programs of investing. Um, when you think about your statement that you trust, you're glad that the state treasurer would be responsible. Um, what about the state treasurer gives you that sense that you're glad that they're doing it?
You know, over the years, Senator, I have seen retirement plans, all kinds of savings plans that are so complicated that people don't know how to use them. They leave one set of retirement funds at an employer when they change jobs. They forget about it. There's just so many things that make it complicated for workers, and myself included. I'm not excluding myself from this. So to know that there's something comparable to the college savings plan is just very, it's reassuring. So I'm just a real supporter of this. And to know that you start a new job in Pennsylvania and that program is very easy to take with you. You know where your dollars are.
That is extremely important. You know, we're always competing with other states. We're doing all we can to retain folks to
Right.
stay in Pennsylvania. And since this could be another feature, another benefit of being in Pennsylvania. I
I
know that
agree.
Oregon has a similar plan, California, Illinois, a few. It's a trend that's moving, and we can be with this trend.
That's right.
Uh, Thanks so much. I now want to move it over to John Scott and give him a chance to share his view from his experience and research with at Pew Charitable Trust about your observations regarding the plan and any the pros and cons as you see it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Senator, for having me and for holding this convening. Greatly appreciate it. Um, yeah, I just wanted to, as maybe part of my sort of broader remarks, just comment on a lot of the work that we've done around the country. And I think, it should be noted there are 16 states that have passed legislation, and 8 states, as you've noted, there are 8 states that are up and running today. This is not an unproven idea. It's very practical. It's been around. People are saving today. And we've done a fair amount of research in different parts of the country, trying to understand, does this work for workers and does it work for the small business owners? I think Mr. Rowan made some really good points there and just had a little bit of data behind his remarks. We interviewed employers in Oregon. They started their program in 2017. And so they've had some experience there. And we found that employers are very satisfied with their program experience. And what I think is really important about that is that we found that the smallest employers were the ones who expressed the greatest satisfaction. And it came out in the survey that smaller employers really feel frustrated that they can't provide a 401k plan or other retirement plan to their workers. They're effectively priced out of the market, or they just wear a lot of hats as a business owner and they don't really have a lot of time. So a program like the one in Oregon, which would be very much like what Keystone Saves would be, was seen as a real benefit. And in fact, one owner said, this is great. We can offer a retirement benefit to our workers, and maybe down the road we can have our own 401k, but we can do something today. And just the other point I would make is that we did a survey of workers in the Illinois program, and they also expressed a high degree of satisfaction with their experience in that program. But the really key question for me was, we asked them, do you feel more or less financially secure because you're participating in this program? And 38% said they felt more secure because they're participating in this program versus only 14% who said they felt less secure. So this is a kind of program that can work for both the business owner and the employees, as we've already discussed.
Let me ask you, thank you so much. As you looked at some of these programs across the United States that are currently in place, what did you find with respect to the savings or possibly the impact of the automatic payroll deduction? I know personally that when I was saving and making a decision every 2 weeks, the amount that went in was different every 2 weeks. But when we went to auto savings, it was the same. It was steady. It was just part of the reality, the budget reality, the financial reality. When I didn't have to make a decision every payroll. What did you, if anything, did you find with respect to savings and automatic deduction feature?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that the people, and it's important to know that people can opt out of the program, that, it can work for them, as their life circumstances change, they can re-enroll at some point. So it's very flexible. But the point I think you're making is really the key one. And I think no doubt Eisenhower made the same point that it's a set it and forget it. That this works in the background. It's you set up the payroll one time, as Mr. Rowan said, and it just operates from there. And you really don't have to worry about having to make all these decisions if you are saving on your own. And in fact, we've done some focus groups with workers in different parts of the country, and I remember very distinctly one worker saying, we talked about this idea. Uh, they said, I'm know I should be saving for retirement. Um, and it's something I could do on my own, but I just don't do it. If I could just be set it up on a regular basis, have it be automatic, that would be great. Then it's one less thing I have to worry about.
Set it and forget it. I got to remember that. That's compelling. Now I know that last year you all did a study on the impact of our program on taxpayers, and I know that was also part of Treasurer Torricella's assessment of what the impact of our program would be for the fiscal condition of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Would you share some of the what you found in terms of more the global, not global, but kind of the fiscal impact on the Commonwealth?
Yeah, and that it's a great question because I think oftentimes what we've heard is that this is really just something for people to worry about their own situation. If people don't want to save, that's their problem. And so that was the motivation for this research, was to show that this is a concern for everybody. It's a concern for every taxpayer in every part of the Commonwealth. And so we wanted to understand what happens when people don't save enough for retirement. And, especially, Pennsylvania is much like the rest of the country. It's an aging state. We're going to have a burgeoning older population that's going to be supported by, relatively stagnant group of working age taxpayers. And so we found, just looking at households in the Commonwealth, that given current trends in saving, they were going to fall short of what we felt was a target level of standard of living by about $7,800 a year. So they would have to do something in retirement to adjust for that shortfall in income. And some people are able to move in with relatives, they're able to make adjustments. Some people, though, are going to need some help. And some of that help is going to come in the form of social assistance, like Medicaid. Pennsylvania has a lot of other programs to help the elderly citizens. So we tried to put a number on that level of help that people would need. And that number came out to a grand total of $17.8 billion cumulatively over a 15-year period. So that's over $1 billion a year. And just to break that down a little bit more, that's $14.6 billion in that increased social assistance just due to insufficient retirement savings. But also when people don't have enough savings, they're not spending. So that's a loss of tax revenue to the Commonwealth. So we also added on $3.2 billion in lost tax revenue as a result.
That's a lot of money. I mean,
A lot of money.
that's a lot of money. And uh, so when you look at the billion a year approximately, when do you have that starting? I mean, is that when we get 1 out of 3?
Well,
Uh,
that's an estimate beginning in 2020 to 2035. So this is very current. This is a current problem. And so we can update that number to go in farther into the future, but we picked that 15-year period, and it's what we're experiencing today.
what we're experiencing today. So I'm a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and we've had a number of conversations about the increasing costs of some of the human services assistance. And to hear that as part of it today is very, obviously very challenging as part of our expense formula. And it also means that any delay on action would further put the Commonwealth in a more challenging position. So one of the things we hear sometimes is, what's the impact of taking action? And then what's the impact of not taking the action? And so how do you see, other than 17 billion, but how do you see the impact of not taking action? Maybe it is just the 17 billion, although this has an impact on everyday people, not just on the financial health of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I do want to stress is that this is a solvable problem. This is where Keystone Saves comes into play. That that $17 billion problem could be solved if every household could save an additional $1,890 a year, or $36 a week. Now, not everybody's going to be able to save that. Not every household's going to save that. But the point is, even if most households could save a bit more over a period of time, we could put a real dent in that number. So to your question directly, if Keystone Saves could be implemented, I'll take the positive perspective on this, that we're going to get this done. What would we expect to see? Well, I think the first thing is that fiscal impact. I talked about working age taxpayers. It's a group that's not growing in numbers over time. You're going to lessen the burden on those working age taxpayers, and hopefully they're going to have more room in their pocketbook to spend on other things. That's going to benefit the economy. And of course, as I noted, if people are saving more for retirement, they're going to be able to spend more in retirement, and that's going to both help the economy and help the finances of the Commonwealth. But the other thing I want to mention, though, and I think Mr. Rowan alluded to this, and I think it's hard to follow that act, but just to put an underlying point, small businesses in the Commonwealth are going to be able to attract and retain workers more easily. And this is something that came out of our Oregon study with businesses out there, is that they really feel this is a great tool, especially the small businesses, when they're competing with big companies that have a big corporate 401k plan. The fact that they can say, hey, we've got a retirement benefit here, you should come work for us. That's going to help entrepreneurs and small businesses. And I think the last point I would say about it is that, outside of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and some other smaller cities, Pennsylvania is fairly rural. There are a lot of small businesses in rural communities. And instead of workers having to go to the next county over to work at the Amazon Fulfillment Center, there's a better chance that they're going to be able to stay on Main Street in their own communities, because the small businesses there can offer a retirement benefit package through Keystone Saves.
I'm so glad that you raised that point around community stability, because we have found individuals to move from where they are to the larger employers, and therefore depleting the community of their talent. So I'm really glad that you shared that, and it sounds like there's a leveling of the playing field that you have described, so that small businesses will have a better ability to compete, because the retirement security won't be so disproportionately favoring the large companies, which was very, we want to have small businesses across the Commonwealth, put them in a position to compete. And this is why our current treasurer, Stacey Garrity, who's very pro-business, sees this as a really pro-business solution, as do I. So no, thanks for sharing that. I want to now turn to, if I could, Jessica Ekman. I know that her cameras have some challenges, and that's okay. But Jessica, could you speak to us some about the national picture? I know you're at National AARP. What you're seeing nationally with respect to older adults living, and what it will take for them to retire with dignity.
Absolutely. And thank you, Senator, for having me. Thank you for your understanding about my technology issues. I really appreciate having this conversation today, though. It's not news to many of us that there is this retirement crisis in the country. There are far too many people who are failing to save enough for retirement, and there are many, many people who are saving nothing. They're not saving anything at all. And not being able to maintain your standard of living in retirement is a very real threat in so many older American households, people who have spent their lives working hard and yet not finding it terribly easy to get ahead. So access to payroll deduction is really the key here. I know we've touched on that a couple of times. So workplace savings plans just are not available to a huge number of people, and that's been true for decades. So as you've heard, there are millions of workers in Pennsylvania that don't have a way to save for retirement out of their paycheck at work. So why don't employers offer those retirement plans? And can't workers just go out and open their own IRA? We've heard from Walt Rowan this morning. It comes as no surprise to anyone that small business owners are incredibly busy. We do small business owner survey work all around the country, and we consistently hear that setting up and running a retirement plan is oftentimes three things. It's too confusing, it's too costly, and it's too time consuming. So that brings us to this next question of, if someone doesn't have access to a way to save for retirement at work, can't they just go out and open their own individual retirement account? And the answer is yes, they absolutely can do that, but they don't. Very few people will actually save for retirement on their own if they don't have a way to do so at work. So again, that brings us back to access. It brings us back to payroll deduction. And that brings us to the Work and Save programs, which is what we call these Keystone Saves type programs that are being implemented around the country. And these programs are aimed at solving the problem of access for workers and those concerns around time, cost, and confusion for employers. They're public-private partnerships where the state serves to draw the businesses together and the private sector runs the investments. And they're designed to give access to many more workers than currently have it and do so in a way that's cost-effective and easy to use. So it allows people to save right out of their own paychecks, which is really the key. The savings is, as Nora mentioned, their own money that they can take with them from job to job. It's easy for employers, it's easy for employees, and there are no ongoing costs or risks to employers or to the state. Key design features like automatic enrollment and automatic escalation, these are best practices in the private sector, and they can make a very big difference in dollars saved over time. It's completely voluntary for employees. They're given the choice to opt out at any time. They have full control over their participation and contributions. And finally, we've talked about this as well. This is a huge component. The accounts are portable. Employees can take that retirement savings with them when they leave a job, which is increasingly important as the structure of the working economy continues to change. So today, 19 states have enacted new programs of some type for private sector workers. 16 of these are automatic IRAs, like the proposal here in Pennsylvania. There's currently more than $1.2 billion in assets under management from these programs, not all of which, as John mentioned, are up and running yet. Several of them are. It's a staggering number considering most folks aren't putting away thousands of dollars a month here, right? They're putting a little bit aside each month, knowing that every dollar saved now can really have a big impact on their future. So, that's really the key. It's that access, it's payroll deduction. And I'm just very excited about the work here in Pennsylvania and continuing to grow the success of these programs.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the national perspective as well, along with John. Let me ask you this. So we have some challenges here in Pennsylvania from those who want folks just to go into 401k plans exclusively. So how have other states, as far as you know, been able to overcome some of the resistance to these easy plans to level the playing field for small businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question because there has been pushback at certain times from certain groups, and I think that the number one thing that we've found that resonates with workers, with business owners, with legislators and elected officials is really that small business community voice. Folks like Walt, who are able to come on and say, not only do I want to be able to offer something to my employees, but this would be such a great benefit to them. It would be a great benefit for me. It would be a great benefit for the community. That's been something that we try to be very, very mindful of. We always want to have a lot of input from the small business community. Many of ARP's members are small business owners themselves, and we want to be very cognizant of that. And I think that that's something that we try to be very careful about, making sure that we've designed these programs to be incredibly low impact. They're very easy for employees to use, but they're unbelievably easy for employers, right? There are no fees associated with them. It's free to use. There's no fiduciary liability. And I think that that matters a great deal.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. So a question for you and possibly John, with respect to withdrawals. Particularly, I heard some concerns about withdrawals from these funds, how much people are withdrawing. I've also heard some people say, well, there were more withdrawals in connection with the pandemic. Any information you all have on money coming out, the withdrawals from the funds over time?
Absolutely. And John may be able to speak to this in more detail. But during the pandemic, times were very difficult for a great number of people. And we did see in certain programs that folks would be pulling out a little bit of money here and there, to cover very basic necessities that they needed. They then continued to save in the program, right? So these acted exactly the way that we want them to work. I would never want to conflate retirement savings with emergency savings, but these are set up to be Roth IRAs, so you can always pull out your contributions penalty free. That's a big benefit to savers. These are people who may very well not have had $200, $300, $400, $500 put away. And so this was a great ability for them to be able to pull a little bit of money out and then go right back to savings. We understand that, these things happen. A pandemic is not the easiest time to get through for most people, and being able to have access to some funds made a big difference.
I think Jessica said it really well. The only two things I maybe add real quickly is that a lot of these workers, they don't have stable income all the time. They don't always get stable shifts at work. So their income goes up and down, and like everybody else, they have financial shocks. I paid $1,300 to get my car fixed the other week, and for a lot of folks, that's how they get to work. So these things happen. And so that access is really important to them. The other point I would just make is we did do a study. It's almost the pandemic was a natural experiment in many ways. And looking at the Oregon program, we saw that when the state went into lockdown in March of 2020, 4 years ago, hard to believe, but when it went into lockdown, people were furloughed. We saw withdrawals spike from the Oregon Saves program. But in April, once relief money started to flow, it dropped down. People kept saving through the pandemic. So it's there when you really need it. But I think people do view it as a retirement program that they hopefully can keep building over time.
Thank you both. To save through the pandemic is a powerful testimony about the recognition that this is a retirement program, because those are probably, one of the severest stresses on families in several generations, probably over 100 years. And to see people come back and really get it, that they're committed, is a extremely powerful statement. So I think I have addressed the key questions that I had. Before we're gonna now allow individuals to put questions in the chat, and then Erin, who's on my team, who put all this together and who's responsible for making this all happen, we should certainly thank her. She will then get the questions to us. So while Erin is in the process of gathering questions, I did just want to ask an open-ended question. Is anything that one of our panelists wanted to say that you were not able to say because of the questions or the time? But certainly if there's a panelist who had something that they really want to share with us, this would be a good time to do it. And if not, that's okay. John, go ahead.
Yeah, well, anytime you give me the mic, I'm going to take advantage of it. But the one thing I'd say really quickly is that there's always a question of, do these state programs compete with the private sector? There's a very robust private market for retirement plans. The Vanguards, Pennsylvania-based Vanguard and Fidelity and others provide 401k plans. Just very briefly, our research shows that actually the state programs complement the private market. That when the state has this kind of a program, employers then have a choice: should I enroll my workers in a program like Keystone Saves, or should I adopt my own program? Many choose to adopt their own 401k plan, and so we sort of see this not as not just providing coverage through a program like Keystone Saves, but there's actually a multiplier effect where more workers actually get coverage through an employer-sponsored retirement plan. So it has a very beneficial effect out there in the private sector.
And yeah, and that makes sense to me because as with the Commonwealth doing promotion of the program, it does could have the impact of employees seeing that retirement is important and getting the message retirement is important is something, as we've had the discussion today, more people need to hear. And I think someone mentioned, one of the panelists mentioned that an employee could move from the state plan or the private plan, their own plan, to a 401k plan over time. So you could start one place and go into the 401k later and be much more likely to go into a 401k later once you've already established the discipline and the recognition that retirement is so important. But that's good to know that it's more complementary than competitive. Nordot Eisenhower, I saw you come on camera, so go ahead.
What I wanted to say is that I think that what we're doing is enabling people to feel more secure about their future. I hear people that are concerned about their financial security in later years. And this is a tool. It helps individuals, it helps families, it helps people of all ages, and it helps small businesses. So it's just such an appealing program. So I just wanted to add that.
I'm so glad you did, because part of feeling good about the present or about the future is knowing you're doing something.
That's right.
And so, right, if you know you're contributing 15 a month, 20 a month, 25 a month, you are actively engaged doing something about your future. And people, you're right, people feel better when they are engaged or making a contribution. And it lifts a load off of them to know that they got a better chance to retire with dignity. And so the present value of this, we talked a lot about future value, but the present value is compelling as well. It's hard to measure the psychological benefit of knowing that you're going to be more secure. But I can see that playing out in a lot of dimensions of a person's life, just in terms of hope and happiness. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the present value is high. Now, thanks. It's not just the future value. Thanks so much. I think we have gone through all the questions that I had, and we've given the panelists opportunity to share beyond the questions that I asked and the presentations that they made. So, Aaron, do we have some questions from individuals who have heard what we have shared?
Thank you, Senator. No, we don't have any questions in the chat, but I actually have a question. And before I get to it, I do want to reiterate our great thanks for all of you for participating. This is a great conversation, and hopefully one that we can continue, hopefully one that won't need to continue too long, because we'll get this passed into law. But something I've been thinking about throughout this conversation that we've been talking about, getting people to really be empowered to care about their financial future. I guess my question is, how early is too early to start thinking about this? Because I think this is often a topic that when it comes up, of course, you think retirement, you think it's going to, the people that are going to care about this are those that are already aging or already approaching retirement. But how can we broaden this conversation to get young people to understand the importance of starting early?
I think that's a great question. And, the answer really, and I'm sure that John and Nora and everyone would agree that it's never too early to start saving for retirement. The best time to start saving for retirement is yesterday, the day before, right? And you know, at AARP, we serve the 50 plus. I sometimes get the question of why is AARP involved? You know, if this is for people who haven't yet retired, why is AARP involved? I don't know a whole lot of 50-year-olds who are able to stop working and retire comfortably. They're out there, and I'd love to know their secrets, but most people are going to be working well into their 50s, 60s, and beyond. That's something that AARP is very aware of. People are working much longer than they used to, either out of choice or out of necessity. And we want to make sure that they have the tools then, all the way down into your 20s, to really put just a little bit of money away. You know, the sooner that you do that, the more it can grow, the more you're going to have money to rely on in your later years.
Go ahead, Nora.
I'd like to add something to Jessica's answer. Great answer, Jessica. The reason we care at AARP is because we know that someday these 20-year-olds are going to be 50. They don't know it. I was 20 myself once. Maybe hard to believe, but I was. I remember what I did about retirement savings. It's not something I'm proud of. I'm not going to tell you a story. I started saving at my first job. That's what we want people to do. This program makes that easier. So at AARP, we care about you because we know you're going to be 50. You're going to be in our official advocacy population. So I just want to make that point very clear. We know because we have real life experience with saving for retirement because we're older now and we see how important it is.
I would just add one anecdote and one maybe research-based point is that my daughter is a senior at the University of Pittsburgh, and she's a nursing student, and she started working her freshman year at a hospital, UPMC hospital in Pittsburgh, and she joined the 401k plan, and she's saved over $1,000 already. She hasn't graduated yet from college, and so I think part of that is reflective. You can sense what I talk about at the dinner table. It's just a constant drumbeat, you know, based on my work. But it has an effect, and I think there's, you know, beyond the public schools, you know, I think there's an opportunity to sort of educate people and give them access to something like Keystone Saves. It's going to influence their behavior, and it's also going to educate them through experience. You know, one thing, the research point I was going to make is that we know from our work that when people have access to a retirement plan, they're much more likely to use more sophisticated tools for financial planning, like online calculators, as opposed to when they don't have access to a retirement plan. So it's not just providing information in schools, but providing access to savings opportunities will increase their financial IQ in the process.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, all the points are excellent, but this is kind of a gateway, the beginning of higher financial literacy, which can have so many impacts, present value, not just future value. You may not know that Erin just had a birthday. I'm not going to tell you which one it was, but she just had a birthday. And so she's in the group of younger people who got to make a decision about how much to put into retirement as well. So,
And John, I might be calling you after this for some advice since the senator had to call me out on that.
give till it hurts, Erin.
I also want to highlight that not everyone has a father like John Scott, and you're able to get your daughter to encourage your daughter because of your, you know, I'm sure your influence. And this is a way to spread that influence through government as well. So that's important and very, very important lesson about what government can do, what we can do to help citizens broadly to see these opportunities. So that's I mean, that's fantastic.
Senator, we have a point in the chat that was made by Jared in Senator Dillon's office. Not sure if you see that on your end, but I think he makes a really good point about the broader conversation of financial literacy in the General Assembly. So if you want to maybe comment on that as well. And thank you, Jared.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. Jared was part of the Senate Finance Committee when we developed the Keystone Saves plan So he's been part of this for a long time. We in the General Assembly have some recognition that financial literacy is important, have adopted some legislation that would require some level of financial literacy teaching in the public schools, K to 12. So I think there's some basic recognition that it is important. Beyond that, though, we need to go a long ways. We got a long way to go. I know that the Shapiro administration has some financial literacy initiatives, but in the General Assembly, we have a significant distance to go, which is, could be part of the reason we don't have the legislation passed to date. But nevertheless, I am confident that with the voices that we heard today, as well as following this approach of getting small business owners to be the leading voice or a leading voice for the legislation, that may get us past the finish line. Because generally speaking, we in the General Assembly don't want to do anything to harm small businesses. We generally want to increase their chances of success. So that approach, that message from that sector may get us the rest of the way since we got it out of the House. We hit an hour on this, and I think an hour conversation is good. I don't think we need necessarily more than an hour. If we have asked all the questions, and Aaron, let me know if we got all the questions asked, then we'll just wrap it up. Aaron, where are we? Do you have any remaining questions?
No remaining questions. We are good to wrap it up, Senator.
So, first of all, I cannot thank the panelists more for spending this hour with us. We want to put our fellow colleagues and Pennsylvanians in a position to understand the value of retirement savings, and doing so through the automatic payroll deduction plan that is in Keystone Saves, which allows the treasurer to invest your money, individual money, not the Commonwealth's money, the employees' money, so they will be in a position to have further retirement savings and retire with dignity. We have heard how easy these plans are to set up, how much a small business owner would benefit from it, how much we would save as a Commonwealth, over $17 billion, and how across the nation, individual states are going in the same direction. And we've also heard about the present value of this program, helping people have a better sense of their own security. That is so, so important. So again, I want to thank all the panelists. We still got to get Senate Bill 728 passed, or the counterpart from the House. Thank you all again, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, everybody.